In this world, there are only two sides, the strong and the weak. You see, in this world, the strong are comprised of those with quirks, genetic abilities that you would usually begin to display at the age of 4 years old. Your rank in the hierarchy would be determined by the type of quirk you had. The stronger the quirk, the more praise you would receive, the more benefits you would receive as a result. But the weaker the quirk, the more normal you could say you would be treated, the less respect you would get. You would have to earn that respect, earn that trust, all of these things just because you had a fairly weak quirk. And those who were born with strong quirks, they would receive everything on a silver platter, basically be born with a silver spoon in their mouths. Now, there are those who are born without quirks. Those are the ones who are considered the bottom of the barrel, the weakest of the weak, the ones who deserve no respect whatsoever. One of these people would go by the name of Izuku Midoriya, and he realized from an early age, this world is unfair. This world is unjust. Forget the law. The law isn't going to deal with those in power, those with strong quirks. You want to know why? Because they believed that they were going to be the next generation's heroes, people that were going to fight the bad guys, protect the citizens, all of that good stuff, and then make a whole lot of money, become famous, all of these different things just because of their abilities. And Izuku had to admit, he was sick of it. Matter of fact, he had to deal with this stuff every single day of his life. People treating him unjustly just because of the fact that he was quirkless, and he had to earn people's respect. No matter how long it took, he would eventually earn people's respect. Either respect or fear. He didn't care which one it was going to be. He also realized one day that he would genuinely have to take the law into his own hands. The law wasn't going to save him from any of these guys, any of these bad guys. You wanna know why? Because he was quirkless. Why should the law have to deal with the quirkless? The law was just going to treat them like trash anyways. So he figured that he would need to be the judge, the jury, and executioner if he was ever going to get revenge on the ones who had done him wrong, the ones who had killed his family. Izuku wasn't like the other kids growing up, you see. He was scrawny, he was weak, he was quirkless. That was honestly probably the most important part of it all. He was quirkless. Many people did not respect the quirkless in the society. They were considered the bare bones of the modern society. 80% of the population had quirks, abilities, even people who were able to pop their eyes out of their heads. If that was considered a quirk, then at least you garnered some use. When you were quirkless, you were considered probably collateral damage. You were considered to be weak, useless, a Sakura. Okay, let me stop there. But basically, many quirkless people weren't respected because of these different aspects. Why would you hire a quirkless person to be a construction worker, for example, and risk them getting injured? Next thing you know, they have to pay this person as compensation for getting injured on the job, when you could just hire somebody who had a quirk that allowed them to harden their body, turn their body into steel, for example, or they're able to, well, create more arms, and these arms are able to allow them to do more work, be more productive than a quirkless person. With all of these different aspects put in mind, it really made quirkless people seem very useless, less desirable to many markets. It was to the point where many quirkless people would struggle to even find a job. Some, they even ended up deleting themselves in the process, realizing that this society was no longer made for them. They were just strands of a former society, a quirkless society. They had no real meaning in this new world. They had no reason to be in this world of superpowered individuals when there are people that could literally kill you with a snap of their fingers. What use is there in even really being part of this society? How do you even defend against that? So rather than having to endure many more cycles of pain, brutality, discrimination, they figured that it would just be best to just end it all right then and there. Izuku, he even had to admit, he thought about it himself a good couple of times, figuring that maybe it would just be better for everyone if he just did not exist in this reality. Matter of fact, he would even get bullied every day by some of his classmates, especially the likes of a blonde by the name of Katsuki Bakugo. You see, he had an explosion quirk. It was a rather dangerous but powerful quirk at the same time. It was also considered quote-unquote flashy. And Izuku could understand the appeal of such a quirk, but at the same time, this guy was a jerk. He was a pompous bastard, you could say. He was a jerk to the very end. He even treated him bad from when they were kids. He had known Bakugo for about 10 years and counting. And ever since then, wait, no, now that he thought about it, they had known each other for even longer than that. They had known each other since they were little kids. They had known each other since they were barely even toddlers, even before then, because of the fact that their mothers, they were friends with each other. You see, their mothers, they didn't really have all that strong of a quirk, or quirks. You see, Izuku's mother, she had slight telekinesis. Her quirk was literally called attraction of small objects. Basically, she's able to attract small objects to herself, and it's not even particularly fast either, the way that she does it. When it came on to Bakugo's mother, Mitsuki Bakugo, it seemed as if she was just able to produce some form of lotion, which worked amazing for her skin. That's why she was able to look so youthful for so many years. But to be honest, it was both quirks, they were pretty meager in the long run. But Bakugo Katsuki, he managed to get the lucky draw for some reason. His parents' quirks mixed with each other, and that produced his explosion quirk. He was able to sweat a nitroglycerin type substance, which he was able to detonate at any point from the palms of his hands. When it came on to Izuku, he did not have such luck. He was literally born quirkless, and Bakugo, he would bully him every day for that mere fact. It wasn't because of the fact that, oh, he was into comics or whatever. No. He bullied him simply because he was quirkless. Bakugo, he didn't take the time to actually learn more about Izuku after he found out that he was quirkless. He just decided to treat him like dirt from there, and many kids would just follow along, not wanting to face Bakugo's wrath. They figured that it would just be best to stick with the strong rather than try to help the weak. Matter of fact, Izuku decided to stand up to Bakugo one time and defend a kid that was on the ground crying because of the fact that they had a weak quirk. And you wanna know what happened? Bakugo and his goons, they beat him up. Matter of fact, the kid that he was trying to defend, that kid ended up joining with Bakugo right after. Once he saw that Bakugo was leaving him alone and dealing with a broccoli head kid, he was like, oh snap, let me join the winning team. That was literally his mindset in Izuku. He couldn't believe this. The people that he tried to protect were literally beating down on him. All because he was weak. He realized from an early age that strength was all that mattered in this world. And so Izuku realized that he needed to improve. He needed to improve his physical capabilities. He needed to become strong no matter what. But he didn't understand that just pure brute strength alone wasn't going to win. He had to realize that the hard way as well. You see, one day, Izuku would come home from school, beat up once again. His clothes, they were in tatters, mud was all over him, mud, dirt, whatever you want to call it. Matter of fact, his hair was kind of burning as well. There was smoke coming from his hair. His mother knew what was happening, but she just didn't know how to tell Mitsuki that her son was beating up her son. Or, well, I could probably phrase that in a better way. Basically, Inko did not have enough evidence to prove that Bakugo was bullying her son, that Mitsuki's son was harassing Izuku. And because of that, Inko just had to endure seeing her son be bruised and beaten every single day for trying to stand up to himself. Izuku had gotten into a lot of fights over the years, and he lost every single last one of them. At least, when it came on to fighting Bakugo, though. When it came on to the other kids, over time, he began to pick up more of a fight, pick up more steam when it came on to fighting these other kids in his school. So long as Bakugo wasn't there, or it wasn't a group of kids ganging up on him, he would sometimes have some success. But nobody would ever acknowledge the success of his. Instead, people would just look at the ones that were being up by the Quirkless kid and be like, a Quirkless? A cripple? They beat you up? They would just laugh at the ones who were beaten up by Izuku. And these guys, they would just decide to get their revenge by doing a gang up against Izuku. Have their gangs pull up on Izuku and beat him up, jump him, all that stuff, in order to restore their credibility, their status in the school's eyes. Izuku hated it every single day. He realized that this world was unfair, but there wasn't really much he could do about it besides what he was doing right now. All he could hope is that one day he will be graced with newfound strength. Maybe, who knows, he will be reborn with a quake, or maybe he was a late bloomer of the highest extent. Who knows, maybe at the age of 14 he could probably awaken a quirk or something along these lines, but that was wishful thinking. Because even by the time he turned 14 years old, he still had yet to awaken a quake. And his mother saw this, and she realized that it might be good for him to take a break from all of this. So instead, trying to comfort him in all of this, Inko decided to just have it be that they have a little picnic, you could say. And just take his mind off from all of the stress at school, because she was noticing his hair actually beginning to turn white as well. And she didn't want him to die from stress or anything. Instead, she would try and take him to a picnic and also try and get him switched out of his current school. Maybe they could move and go to a better neighborhood, somewhere where he would be less discriminated against for being quirkless. Hopefully the next place that they could go to would also offer better rents as well, because it was pretty hard to, well, not be working Basically, Asashi, her husband, he worked out at sea. He worked outside of Japan, outside of the country, to say the very least. And he would usually, send money in order for them to just survive. The fact that, she wasn't working made it pretty hard though. They were basically working off of ends meet for the most part, because the work that Asashi did, it didn't really pay that much, but it was the best that he could do with how his quirk was. He could breathe fire, but not for very long. And he didn't really have that great of an education either. It wasn't like he was into computer science or anything. No, he just ended up getting a construction work outside the seas or something along these lines. I don't know the proper term for it, but basically Hasashi would work for many different clients. Different companies wanted different things, and Hasashi would basically be part of a construction team for the most part. And they would be out at seas for the most part as well. Hasashi would work in different countries at times, and he would usually send Inko back some money. Hopefully sometimes that money would be enough to get for rent. But sometimes the rent would just get too high, and they would also have to pay for Izuku's medical bills as well. Every time that he got injured to the extent where he started to break bones and all that, that was an issue. But this one time, Inko wanted to just get Izuku's mind off of everything, all the stress at school, by taking him to a park to have a little picnic, to have a little bond of sorts. But while bonding, these two would end up witnessing something that they were never meant to see. You see, ever since quirks arrived in this world, ever since quirks started to pop up in the world, the Yakuza family, they started to gain less and less prominence in the world. The more powerful quirks became, the less powerful the Yakuzas became as a result. And they had to do anything in order to hold on to some sort of ground in this world. Shady deals was just one of the things that they would usually end up doing. And with this one shady deal, you see, things did not go all that well to say the very least. You see, what ended up happening was that a hero was actually in disguise. They were hoping to catch some Yakuzas and bring them to justice. Unfortunately, this hero was way too over himself. They had a very big ego, to say the very least. They didn't know what sort of threat that the Yakuzas really were. And of course, the ones that they decided to mess with on this very day just so happened to be, very powerful ones, to say the very least. It didn't help with the fact that these guys also had this thing called Trigger. They ended up injecting themselves with it once they realized that this was a pro hero in disguise, and they would instantly go for the kill. They would have killed the hero, and Inko and Izuku, they would have seen it all. Once the Yakuzas realized that there were witnesses, they made sure to remember these guys' faces. And after that day, of course, these two were basically on a run. Both Inko and Izuku, they kinda had to fear for their lives. They were scared of what could happen to them. While coming home from school one day, Izuku would make his way inside the apartment, but something was off. For some strange reason, the door was unlocked. That already in and of itself was unusual, and it seemed as if the door was kind of broken into. Not broken into, but it was sort of jammed. It seemed like the doorknob was loose. There were some issues with it that he just couldn't really make all that much sense of. Once he entered the apartment, he realized just how beat up the place looked. All their furniture was wrecked, and there seemed to be a puddle of blood. Izuku's heart started to pound when he began to think of what could have happened. He remembered what happened back at the park, and he immediately started jumping to conclusions. He was praying, he was hoping that this was not going to be the case. He didn't want to believe that he didn't want to believe it. He didn't want to believe that this was going to happen. The more and more he walked closer to the living room, the more and more his heart began to pound, and eventually the truth would be revealed in the form of a body in the middle of the living room. This body just had to be somebody that he recognized. Why? Why did it have to be his mother that had to die? Of all the people in this world, why did it have to be the kind ones? Why did it have to be the people that basically looked after him from when he was a kid? Why did it have to be the ones that would actually try and be nice to people no matter their history? And yet, people like Bakugo, for example, people who would torture him relentlessly day by day, they managed to get away scot-free for all their crimes. Yeah, he understood that the world was unfair, but come on, give him a break for crying out loud. At least punish them, don't punish the innocent. All Inko was guilty of was seeing a crime being done. That was it. And she feared for her life day by day. She was trying to move out of this neighborhood. She was trying to better her life. She was trying to better his life as well. So why? Why did it have to be her? Matter of fact, she even had a quirk herself. Izuku, who didn't have a quirk. So, when he was really thinking about it, that just meant that he was going to be next soon. The fact that you know what? Matter of fact, now that he thinks about it, or now that he thought about it, they probably went for her first, thinking that it would be best to go after the one with the quirk. They probably did all sorts of research on them. They probably managed to find out their address from all of these shady dealers that they dealt with. And they managed to have like all of these different informants over the years that they could track down anybody. And now when it came on to Inko, that's how they realized that, well, she had a quirk. It would be best to deal with Inko first. No matter what sort of quirk she had, she still had a quirk that she could use to defend herself. Now when it came on to Izuku, he had no quirk. He was going to be easy pickings for them. He needed to get out of here fast. He couldn't afford to die. No. He needed to get revenge. He needed to avenge his mother, his family. He figured that it would only be a matter of time now before they'd probably go after his dad as well, because they probably realized that he would eventually gain information about what happened to his family while he's up in the States, while he's up in these different countries, and he'll probably go down in order to get revenge, probably go down and get some heroes or something in order to deal with these criminals, to deal with the Yakuza. All of this, the Yakuza probably didn't want to deal with. So they were probably just going to erase the whole family from existence. And Izuku, he was not going to die. He was going to punish these criminals. If the justice system wasn't going to do it, if the heroes weren't going to do it, if nobody with actual power was going to do it, well, Izuku supposed that he would just need to create his own power. He would need to develop his own power in order to stop these guys, in order to punish these guys, in order to bring true justice to the world. He vowed from that day forward that he was going to become the new judge, jury, and executioner. He was going to become what all villains feared the most, what all criminals feared. He wasn't going to be Batman or anything. No. That was going too easy on these criminals. Oh no. He vowed that he was going to kill the ones who killed his mother. He believed in an eye for an eye ideology. You kill my mother, I kill you. A life for a life. It's that simple. After this point in Izuku's life, he realized that also when it came on to being a hero, it was completely pointless. Literally just give up on that dream. There was literally no way that he could become a hero with his condition as of right now. But he had an alternative. You see, Izuku, he was thinking about joining the military. Sure, he had to lie about his age or forge some documents in order to show that he was 18 instead of like 14, but it was going to be useful for him in the long run. He ended up finding some shady dealer. I don't know what's up with me and shady dealers in this story, but he ended up finding a guy offers like some sort of Craigslist type of thing. Basically, he could help Izuku in a way. Izuku ended up having his documents be forged to show that he was 18, just a couple years older than he really was, in order to be enlisted into the military. After that point, Izuku trained every day. He would work his butt off for the next couple years. He would honestly go up in the ranks as well. He would serve as part of, well, the Japanese Navy, or like the equivalent to the Navy. And he would even become a top ranked soldier even in there. By the time that he was actually 16, he would have already been considered rather high ranked. And because of how he performed when it came on to being in the military, many people did question whether he was really quirkless or not. You see, considering the days that he would work himself close to death, this would have also helped him with his mental fortitude, his physical abilities, all these things, and the fact that he was also learning how to wield firearms while in the military as well. This also put him at an advantage, because in this society he realized something. Even when it came on to having a quirk for some reason, that didn't necessarily mean that everybody was bulletproof. Now this came with exceptions. People who could harden their skin, for example, of course they were considered exceptions, but something akin to like an emitter class, without like any sort of real defense. Yeah, a bullet could wound them. Shoo, he had a feeling that, well, probably not All Might, but the likes of Endeavor, a bullet wound could probably harm him. And when he realized this, he realized just how vulnerable this society really was. Many people didn't really think about firearms like that anymore. This was what the military was showing him though. It was showing him what the real world was like. He was gaining all sorts of experience while there. He was literally being pushed to death every single day. He would literally have to carry boats on his head at times. He would have to carry these cargo boats or like these canoes on his head. He would have to be running miles. He would not be allowed to sleep for weeks on end. He would have to do all sorts of crazy routines in order to keep up with his crewmates, his colleagues, those who were born with quirks. Granted, they may have not been the strongest quirks out there, but they were still quirks nonetheless. And these were physical enhancing quirks on top of that. So for Izuku to even keep up with the rest of them and not end up losing his position in the military, he needed to work 10 times harder, obviously. This, with the memories of what happened to his mother, this continued to just push him forward in order to succeed, in order to do better than all of these guys combined. Sure, he struggled, but he would never achieve anything without some form of struggle. He realized that early on. Even when he was a kid, he had to struggle. So what difference did it make here? The only difference here is that he didn't have anybody to comfort him. Nobody was going to hold his hand in this sort of thing anymore. Izuku decided to join the military. He was going to make the best of it. Years have passed by, and he would just continue to rise up. 5 years would have passed. He would have been 19 at this time. But when it came onto the military, obviously everybody thought he was like 23 technically. And at this point, he had gained so much experience. He had his mind fortitude. He had literally had to experience death over and over again. He knew what it felt like to take away a life. That was deep for Izuku. He had a feeling that even with some of the heroes in today's society, they still didn't know what that was like. They didn't know what it was like to, well, kill somebody. They didn't know what it was like to actually take away a life like that, to delete somebody from this world. None of them knew that, or at least they didn't have to deal with that as often as Izuku did. And the fact that he was quirkless on top of that, that just showed what this world was like. After those 5 years, Izuku would also be allowed to leave the military. And he had a plan from that day forward. He had gained so much experience, but yet, he still had one thing on his mind: revenge. He still needed to avenge his mother, and he realized after these 5 years in the military that simply deleting these couple of goons from the Yakuza, that wasn't going to be enough. He didn't even get to see what these goons looked like, the ones that killed his mother. No, he realized that if he was going to get revenge, the best way possible would be to literally topple over the current Yakuza. He would literally need to take down every last member of the Yakuza. And you had noticed in recent years that the Yakuza was making a bit of a rise as well. They were starting to make a comeback. Izuku realized that he needed to work his way up to the boss. He needed to topple the kingdom, topple over the empire that was building up for the Yakuza, one step at a time. He would eventually maybe need some help, but for right now, he was just going to use his weapons. He would first start off by using some firearms that he was allowed to carry with him from the military. He would have gotten a license in order to have these weapons on him. Just like basically, Izuku would have had a license for certain firearms, to say the very least. I'm talking heavy duty firearms as well. These sort of firearms Izuku would carry with him when he decided to, well, infiltrate the Yakuza. He would have went by one of their bases, and he would have immediately started to investigate. Some of these guys would try and stop Izuku in his tracks, but Izuku would show them the sort of martial arts that he learned while in the military. Ones that were especially designed to deal with quirk users. Those who had became so reliant on their quirks to the point where they didn't know how to really fight without them. I'm talking pressure points as well. Pressure points that would disable a person from using their quirk for a certain amount of time. And Izuku, he would use these opportunities in order to get the jump on these guys. And these were jumps Izuku would use in order to end up getting information out of these guys if they did not want to die. Oh no, who am I kidding? He still killed these guys. He still killed these guys anyways. And when it came on to going further up the ranks, Izuku would just continue to upgrade his weaponry over time. And he would even don a uniform of sorts. He would spray paint a skull onto some form of body armor. Basically a bulletproof vest that was spray painted black. He would spray paint a white skull onto there as well. He would also get a tactile uniform, tactile boots, gloves, and a ski mask as well, in order to, well, hide his identity, because at first he was just messing around with, well, a hoodie. Yeah, he would literally just wear a green hood over his head, and he would also wear a face mask as well in order to hide his identity. But he realized that this wasn't going to work for very long, and that's how he started to upgrade his equipment by raiding these Yakuza bases in order to actually upgrade his weaponry, in order to actually improve his current abilities. And he would also eventually gain the attention of both heroes and villains alike, not just the Yakuza anymore. Izuku was making a name for himself. Many people started to call him the Punisher. Many people were like that this guy was a true hero to the very end because of the fact that he was bringing true justice. Many people had been wronged by the Yakuza over the years, but Izuku, he was indirectly helping them. He was indirectly helping these people get revenge. Many people were praising him, but many others would also criticize Izuku for his actions, mentioning how they should leave this to the heroes. What Izuku was doing was vigilantism, and this was illegal to the highest degree. But let's be honest, Izuku did not care whatsoever. He only cared about the fact that the Yakuza had to pay. Until one day, he gained a bit more information. It turns out that the Yakuza had also been making some deals. It turns out that the Yakuza had been making deals with, well, these distributors. Well, okay, let me rephrase this. Basically, the Yakuza had been making some deals with these guys. They went by the name of the League of Villains, and apparently they wanted to buy some weapons. Weapons such as, well, quick erasing bullets and trigger. He wasn't exactly sure what these were, but these quick erasing bullets were what interested Izuku the most. Bullets that could erase quirks. But how? How did they work? Now Izuku was interested even more, because if he could topple over that empire, maybe, just maybe, this would leave the Yakuza screwed even more than they were before. Maybe this was what their main selling point was, the fact that they had the ability to erase quirks permanently. If not permanently, then for at least a couple minutes or something, which could even out the odds when fighting a hero. This was interesting. This was getting more and more interesting. The fact that Izuku didn't know how it worked either. He had his suspicions that the way that they went about it was in an immoral way. But one day, while trying to investigate it, while trying to gain more information about this from some of the Yakuza lackeys, he would hear police sirens and a familiar voice telling him to freeze and to put his hands up if they didn't want to, well, be blasted. Izuku would turn around to see just who was talking, and sure enough, it was him, Bakugo Katsuki, in the flesh. How surprising. After all of these years, his former tormentor was back to deal with him once again. But this wasn't the same Izuku anymore. Things weren't going to go the same anymore. Oh no, Izuku vowed that this was never gonna happen again. But yeah, that's basically all I have for right now, people. It is your boy King Titan X signing out. If you guys like the video, you guys already know what to do. Leave a comment, maybe leave a like as well. Hit that subscribe button if you've been rocking my content for a little while too. But overall, that's basically all I got to say. Besides, maybe also share the video. And yeah, join the Discord. Peace.